You know, a car is a truly great car when one of that car is not enough. And for me, the classic Mini Cooper is that car. I'll never forget the day that I brought this tan Mini home. Driving so slowly had never produced so many smiles. This is a 68 Mini Mark II. It was originally a Mini 1000. It was swapped over to a 1275 and has twin SU carburetors. Now the twin SU carb cars are probably my favorite. They have much more of the scream that you expect from the 1275, lots of intake honk, and they make a beautiful sound out of the exhaust. It's my favorite setup on this car. This one makes pretty good power when it runs. Right now, I have a fueling issue. I think it's the fuel pump. Didn't have a chance to replace it before this episode. There'll be an update for you. Definitely post some video of this car screaming around. It's a little bit lower than the other one. It definitely is much more of a driver's car type of setup. But even the comfort setup on the Green Mini is just so much better than any normal car would be. They just really are fantastic driver's cars. Now I have room to do everything in this car. I can easily get my foot to the clutch, brakes, you know, I'm very comfortable in the car. The gear shift is as good as a 68 Mini's gear shift is going to be. I love the sliding windows that this car has. I think it adds much more character than the roll-up windows of the later cars, and they really do work quite easily, and I think they look cool. So the Mini is actually really spacious inside. I'm sprawled out here in the passenger seat, and as you can see, there is a room for a driver. One of the things I love about the Mini is the packaging. Now, they got it right with this car. You will be hard-pressed to find anything even double this size in the 60s that fits you so accommodatingly. They really got the packaging down, everything down to seat design, moving the engine as far forward as possible. I'm of the mind that there really hasn't been a better packaging design ever in automotive history. Now there's been some that have been pretty good. Volkswagen with their first Golf was a very nicely designed car, but British cars in particular seem to have lost their way. One British car that comes to mind that is pretty poorly packaged is the Jaguar XJR. The 2000 era in particular, there's almost no space inside that car for 4 adults, and it's huge. In an effort to prove that in fact 4 adults can fit in a Mini Cooper, here I am in the back. You can see there's another space for another me. I would be up here in the passenger seat, and I could be driving. It's shockingly big. So not only is the packaging fantastic inside the car, it even has a great boot. You'll find plenty of space for your luggage, and it even has a spare tire, good sized gas tank, and the battery is located down low in the back for perfect weight distribution. They thought of everything. I've had a lot of pals ask me if I could only have one Mini, which one would it be? And honestly, for me, the 68 Mini would have to get the nod. It's an early enough car to still have a lot of vintage touches like sliding windows and just really old school materials, and it feels very, very vintage. It feels from another era. And if you've watched any of these episodes, you know I like that kind of thing. The Smith's gauges, the way the Modelita wheel feels in your hands, the raw nature of this car really endears it to me. Later cars got a full dashboard, but to me that kind of took away some of the space. I liked the parcel shelf, I liked the 3-gauge binnacle, I like the simplicity of these early cars. While I may love it that my fuel-injected car always starts, there's just something about grabbing that choke cable and feeling it do something under the hood. I also really dig seatbelts from another era, and goodness, I love these leather door catches. Very vintage, very cool. From the low back seats to just everything about this car, I love the oldness. But I also love some newness, and the Rover Minis really did move the game on. Much like the Porsche 911, these cars benefited from decades of production and evolution. Cooper is a classic design, a ubiquitous small car design. And it's one that I always wanted when I was a kid. Once I grew up, I found that finding the perfect Mini Cooper was kind of hard. I bought a bunch in the early 2000s and none of them were nice. Importing a car or finding a car locally, neither one really worked for me. And one of the things with Mini ownership is there's a lot of things that people don't tell you. And so that's why I wanted to make this video, because there's a lot of things that you need to think about before you either import or buy a Mini Cooper. One thing I recommend when you're purchasing a Mini Cooper is you have to look at it. Now, whether that means going to England and actually looking at a car that you're thinking about importing, or whether it means going to another state to find one that's already been imported, or one that came here in the 60s that's been well maintained and possibly restored, you really need to look at the car in order to fully understand what it's about. Rust is a real issue. Shady ownership is a real issue, and I've seen a lot of people go through a lot of headaches with Mini Coopers that you can avoid by really doing your research prior to ownership. Now, at this point, most Mini Coopers that were ever produced are able to be imported legally. If you go to any British car show, you'll see quite a few Minis, and I would say it's a really good bet that you find one at one of those car shows. Take a look at the car, look for rust areas. You know, the rocker panels are really prone to rust, the floors, typical places that you're going to look at on any old British car. Another thing I'll say when buying any car is really price is sort of irrelevant. You want the best car you can find, and saying that a Mini Cooper is worth $5,000 or $20,000 is somewhat irrelevant. You really have to look at the car and see, what are the details with this specific car. The 1275 engine is a must. These cars don't make a ton of power even with that engine. You're talking about 60 to 80 horsepower. These cars do need 60 to 80 horsepower to really keep up with modern traffic. The Mini 1000s and the smaller engined Minis, where you're talking about 40 horsepower, is just not getting the job done. And I would say buy one with a 1275 or plan on doing an engine swap. Engine swaps are easy. These cars are very straightforward to work on. Parts are readily available, and there's a great aftermarket and classic car support. Now, certain Minis have a certain look to them, whether it's an Austin Mini or a Morris Mini or an Inocente or a Rover Mini. Quite a few were produced, so there actually is a large amount of Minis available for purchase at any given time. Now, what I'd say is if you're looking for a seller that's overseas, make sure the car is honestly represented. Make sure you have some feedback from other people who have purchased cars from that seller in the past. It's definitely worth your time to find a good Mini Cooper. Alec Izagonis, the designer of the Mini Cooper, was an absolute genius. The layout in this car absolutely will blow your mind. The fan that's in the wheel well, and the radiator that's side opposed, and the fact that this car actually has air conditioning. Yeah, they fit air conditioning in there. Pretty nutty. There's quite a few 88 to 92 Rover Minis out there, so if you really want a modern car, that's probably where you should direct your attention. Now, as I've said, dynamically, there's really not much to eclipse these cars, and I think that taking one of these to a back road, your favorite back road, and throwing it around is probably about the most fun you're gonna have in a car. It is so direct that every little nuance of your favorite road you will see it fresh. And to some extent, learning a road in this car definitely will teach you how to approach it in a 911 or how to approach it in your Ferrari that, maybe you don't want to drive at 10 tenths, where this car, 10 tenths is the only way. In terms of what to look for, the differences in the generation, I think it's somewhat down to what do you like in a Mini. I personally like the 10-inch wheels. I like the tinier wheels just look right on the car. They make it look more characteristic. The 13s look awesome, but they don't ride awesome or handle awesome. They really don't do anything to sort of move the chassis dynamics on. These 12s, there's just not a real aggressive tire option for the 12s, and I find myself really wishing that there was a more aggressive tire. One thing I'd say is that the car doesn't weigh very much and therefore doesn't need a ton of grip. If you finesse the car, it's one of those things where it does drive well, and it does find all of the grip that it needs. Even on these eco tires, it's very much there's no tire squeal. It's still grippy because you're not asking a lot of the tires. The car just doesn't weigh that much in order to really tax them, and thus I've found things don't wear really fast. Tires don't wear very fast. You don't wear out suspension and brakes. And I've owned them on the 13s, and that just it's too much wheel for the car. It really kind of depends on your tastes. I was in love with the way those looked for a while, but I've kind of moved on. Now, whichever Mini you pick, I think it has to be right-hand drive. Now, that could be me, and if you are worried about right-hand drive in the United States, I would say, by all means, do not worry about that. There's almost no learning curve, and it definitely doesn't feel as odd or awkward as you would think that it would. And left-hand drive just, to me, somewhat lessens the uniqueness of driving a Mini Cooper. And driving is what it's all about. And you're not going to find a car that offers more miles per hour for less. Mini ownership is definitely the road less traveled, but I promise you it's a road worth traveling. These diminutive racers really do have a thoroughbred racing history. They're full of character, capable, and absolutely a cracking drive. Besides, you definitely have space for it. So get out there, grab one, and go for a drive. I hope you've been enjoying the series so far. Season 1's been a blast for me. It's really been my lifelong dream to do this. If you head over to Tim's Enthusiast Garage, you'll see that there's some blog posts. There's also some travels with Tim opportunities to go different places, go driving together in the States and in Germany. There's also some t-shirts that I've designed that sort of go with this series that accentuate the cars that I've been covering so far this season, and some are even fun, like this British shirt, which will test your British car enthusiast friends' knowledge, and we'll weed out the enthusiasts from the sort of car guys. Until next time, cheers!